Hi and welcome to my channel on mental health. Our emotions play a part in how we feel, but not only our emotions, our thoughts are connected with our emotions, so our thoughts can also play a part in how we feel. We're thinking so many thoughts per day, and every now and again things may occur, them struggles that may occur in our lives that turn them thoughts that we may think that come along and get stuck. Imagine super glue. Imagine super glue, and that thought is just there, and it's really hard to let go of. And a lot of the time, they're just thoughts. Nothing has actually happened, or as is going to happen. It's just our minds have just got stuck on this specific thought that our mind has created into something, maybe a story, something bigger than what that thought actually is. The rest of the thoughts, they just pass by, but this specific thought may come along and our minds get stuck on it. Like I said, with glue, it's like super glue, it will not pass. And quite often we may get how we feel, how that thought actually makes us feel in ourselves. So the behaviour around thoughts, those thoughts that make us struggle, the reaction is our behaviour. And quite often when that thought is stuck there, it, like I said, it creates a story and makes it bigger than what it actually is. And that's quite normal. It's just that some people may get affected more than others, and quite often it could be something that has occurred in our lives that's affected us, affected our emotions, and then thoughts start coming along, and every now and again a thought gets stuck. Very hard to let go. It's not easy to just think to yourself, I'm just going to let go of that thought. I'm just going to let it pass, like all them other thoughts that we think. Our minds are not like that. Our minds will go quite easily to negative thinking, and a lot of the time we can be quite hard on ourselves, how we react to that thought, being quite hard on ourselves. And that's the negative side of it, and very hard to, like I said, to let go of it. Is something that we have to learn. We have to learn to let go of those difficult thoughts. It's not easy to do. It's something that we have to practice. It's quite easy to go to the negative. The negative's easy to just go to, really. But the positive, when we think, oh, let's just try and think positive, when them thoughts that are occurring, those difficult thoughts that turn into something, like I said, bigger than what it is, and the what ifs, the why me, the reaction towards it, the behaviour towards it, rather than going inwardly and behaving, and our behaviour is like more positive. It doesn't start off like that. It takes time, it takes practice, but it's normalising things like that occur in life that make us feel like that. Like I said, some people find it more difficult than others to actually, when them thoughts come along, to actually cope with. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's because of something that has actually occurred. So rather than taking a step back from that thought and learning the perception around that thought, and looking at that thought and thinking, that thought has no fact. There's no facts there to say that that is really happening, that has really happened, or that's going to happen. we go straight in at it, we go straight in at that thought, and we get stuck like super glue in the middle of that thought. And the longer we're in it, the more it escalates, and the more it's escalating into something that isn't, like I said, have happened or is happening or is going to happen, the more that story, that the imagination starts kicking in, and that's where the behaviour starts coming in. Like I said, it's 9 times out of 10 it's negative. It's a negative thought, an intrusive thought, self-critic thought towards ourselves, towards others, our environment, the things we do, the things that we actually do that help us with our well-being, our mental health. And when we're stuck in that thought because of maybe something that's occurred, something that's come along and made that happen, maybe, it's very hard to pull yourself away from that thought, but it's not impossible to do. It's not impossible to change that behaviour around that thought. It just takes a bit of time and it takes practice to do. And the more you do it, the more you get better at coping with those difficult thoughts and changing that behaviour around that thought into something that's going to benefit in the long run. Like I said, it's easy to go straight to that negative. It's very easy to do that, but it's harder to change it to the positive and letting go of that thought. That's something that we learn. We have to learn to make it feel better, to make our minds heal. It's like I've done in my videos about feeding the cat. Imagine a thought is a cat. That thought comes along and you feed it. You're feeding it with how you're reacting, the perception around it, the behaviour around that thought. The more it keeps coming back, the more it keeps coming back, and the more the reaction is intense. But eventually you start to see what is going on with those thoughts and how things are developing and how it's making you feel within yourself. So you know, it's learning to change that habit, to change that positive habit into something, to change that negative habit into something positive. The perception of how you see that thought, what the perception around that thought, your behaviour around that thought, and taking a step back and looking at that thought and seeing that there's no facts. Thoughts are just thoughts. We do not have to believe everything our mind tells us. But quite often, when we're feeling a bit low in ourselves, we turn to that negative and we start to believe it. And it's very hard if getting drawn into those thoughts. It can be quite hard to get out of, but it's not impossible to do. It's not impossible to do. It's learning and knowing that they are just thoughts and we don't have to believe everything our mind tells us, and learning to be a little bit easier on ourselves rather than being hard on ourselves, because quite often when things don't go our way, when things go wrong, we can be quite hard on ourselves, and knowing that it's quite normal. We all make mistakes in life. Making mistakes is a way of learning and moving forward, and it's knowing that, you know, normalising it and not being I'll get it right in a minute, not being so hard on yourself and taking a step back, even learning to process that thought. Because sometimes when them thoughts are there, the difficulties are there, is processing it can be quite difficult, and that in itself can make it feel overwhelming. So maybe jot down that thought and see what that thought is, and look at the evidence around that thought. And 9 times out of 10, there's no evidence to that thought being true. It's just a thought. Like I said, it's practice, learning these things and learning to change that habit, that behaviour around that thought. These things, they take time. It's not something that's going to work overnight, but it can be done. There is hope out there, because all we got to do is keep moving forward and keep trying and keep practicing. And also as well, it helps us stay in the present moment, because quite often we can drift off with those thoughts, those unnecessary thoughts that cause us havoc, that cause us how we feel, affects our emotions as well. It affects our day-to-day living, it can do, and things around us that normally is, normally the things around us and the things we do normally are good, that help us. Just that one thought can cause so much havoc, but we don't have to let it. What we have to do is to learn and practice to take a step back from that thought. Like I said, write it down, process it better, and see that there's no real evidence around that thought. It's changing the behaviour towards that thought, the reaction towards that thought in a better way, so it helps us within ourselves, it helps our emotions, it helps us to process things better. But like I said, it do take a bit of time, but just be hopeful out there, and just keep trying it, keep trying these things and learning to just keep trying these things, and just think to yourself, it's just a thought. We don't have to believe everything our mind tells us, because quite often our minds can lie to us and get us into a lot of trouble, and how it affects us within ourselves as well. So I'm going to end the video there. Please share this video, because it's very important. Our mental health is very important. We should all keep a check on our mental health from time to time, our well-being. Talking's good. Talking helps process those difficult emotions, but they help with our thoughts as well. Talking helps us to process better how our way of thinking and how we see things, how we are seeing perception around that thought as well. So yeah, please share, and if you wish to subscribe to my channel, feel free to, and I'll see you in the next video.